Gavan and Melonine, and well met indeed. I am Arachir Galadirthan, head of the modding team behind Divide and Conquer, and welcome back to Divide and Conquer as we give you a faction overview for the soon-to-be-released, i.e. they aren't available yet, and soon is an indeterminable amount of time, Gundabad faction. So they are pretty much done, and our attention, of course, as many of you will have seen if you follow the channel or Total War Center, that we are turning, of course, our focus to Angmar and Dol Guldur, who are also going to get overviews or overhauls in version 2.3, the Frozen North or the Cold North or something. There was a name that Hummingbird liked, and I thought, well, if it's got the approval of one other, then we'll go for it. I can't remember what it was, because I didn't want to call it War in the North, because that's a game. So, anyway, Gundabad. So, obviously, as I've mentioned many times, you start off with only the mountain itself. No other towns are in your control at the start, and so Mount Gundabad is your capital. Your starting army is also relatively small. You've got two little forts here, one on the little forest to the east, and one, of course, just sitting away to the northwest. Now, they are primarily there for the free upkeep feature, I should say. Might as well be open and transparent. The fort originally used to be here as a sort of guard of the pass, but it was a little bit too far away, and it was controlled by Angmar. And so by moving it next to Gundabad, it just gave you that extra option and ability to store up some troops. I mean, in hindsight, we may well move that one back to the pass between the mountains, because it works much better there from a realistic point of view. But then equally, having a fort protecting outside of your major city is not unheard of. Of course, Minas Tirith has an entire bloody wall that they built around their farmlands so that they could endure sieges. So having two forts nearby isn't unheard of. But within these forts, you've got, of course, Marauder Chief Gerzog standing in that one alone. Hazolg comes with a few orcs in the fort on the east, and you get a few orcs as well with your king in Mount Gundabad itself. So a very small army, very small town to start with. Your leader is King Mazog. He does sound like an orc, and he shares the Angmar battle map faction leader, which will likely change, campaign map faction leader, sorry, because of course Angmar are changing to humans, so we'll probably take the Dale one and recolor it or something like that. So King Mazog is your faction leader. Over here, Marauder Chief Gerzog is your faction heir, and then if Gerzog or Mazog dies, then Hazolg will likely join, because he is the brother of Mazog. You'll note there that they've got slightly lighter skin representing the Snow Orcs. So on the campaign map, they do have differences. It's only their faction leader that looks the same as the Angmar ones. And your captain, as well, has also been dyed to make him lighter, so that you are iconic. You stand out. The bodyguards of each. King Mazog comes with pale uruks, so he's a very dependable. It's ideal, really, that your faction leader, or your unique faction leader starting bodyguard, should always be one that is both aggressive and defensive, because you don't really want to put him into dangerous situations. So obviously we tend to try and give faction leaders more all-round units, which is why he's got pale uruks. Marauder Chief Gerzog then has the aggressive Orc Avengers, so he's an excellent attacking general. And then we also try and give you one custom archer if your faction, or just in general anyway, it's nice to have an archer general. And indeed, with Black Shield archers, Hazolg comes and fulfills that role. So you've got one defensive or one all-rounder, you've got one aggressive, and you've got an archer. There are no other generals for Gundabad at the start. Your diplomat, of course, comes from Mount Gundabad, and he comes out of the Great Gates of Gundabad. You'll also note here you've got the ruined Hall of Awakening. That is as much as that building will do for you, but if the dwarves ever arrive here, they can upgrade this, and it is where they recruit the Hammers of Gundabad. Right, so Rebel expansion then. Your options are to head south and try and take Goblin Town, which is recommended, as we'll see in a moment. Or ideally, and in almost every campaign, your first capture will likely be Berserkle, because it is entirely secure and you're the only one that can really take it. So that is almost a free settlement, if you will. And then you can also push east and take Dane's Halls. But of course, because we've got the Toggle Fog of War off, you'll note that Dane's Halls is protected by a large army. And if you besiege the city, they will move in to attack you to help defend it. They are one army. Additionally, they will also move over to attack and assist Berzakul, so you need to take that quickly before that army can muster and get you, because this is the same rebel faction. They're all the same faction, as you can see there. Oh, no, sorry, that changed there. So these are Orc Marauders, as it shows you on the message there. But if you were to go to Goblin Town, those are Orc Looters. Over in Morvatarth is Remnants of Ruadar. So there's different sub-rebel factions, and they won't help each other, is something I don't think we've ever explained. So if you've got if they're different sections, then they won't help each other, as I say. For example, Wintirian the general up here, Captain Algar, will not help if you were to siege Wintirian because it's a different sub-faction. I've overly explained that. It was a very simple concept. So you can head north, east, and south. Right, so neighbours and diplomacy then. Well, of course, you start bordering the nation of Angmar, but you are not allied to them. You are, in fact, not allied to anyone. The premise, of course, being that you've just arrived here. So you can choose to ally with them, or you can also choose to, if you wanted to, ally with the Vale of the Anduin. As you will also note, you're not allied or at war with them. You're only at war with the Thranduil's realm, with the realm of Thranduil, or the Woodland realm. Sorry, I keep calling them Thranduil's realm, but we renamed them ages ago. The Woodland realm and Erebor. Those are your only enemies. Now, there was talk that there weren't going to be any enemies for Gundabad, but it was felt that that might make them a little bit too easy because it gives you plenty of time to do what you like, basically. Whereas now you do actually have some threats, which just means that unless you seek ceasefires, they will actively be gunning for you when you border them, so watch out for that. But you aren't at war, as I say, with the Vale of the Anduin. They don't like you, and you don't like them, but of course if you just do nothing, your relations automatically improve, unfortunately. Nature of the game. So the Anduin could be an ally in time. You can play the game how you want, really. So economy, buildings and blacksmith, then you're an Orc nation, so you get the highest tier of towns, but you do not get the third tier of castles, so you don't get strongholds. But you do get all the way up to town. In terms of unique buildings for Gundabad, there aren't any that are specific to Gundabad. You get the same fighter's pit that the other orcs get. Oh, and that one doesn't even have a name. There you go, there's a bug for you. So you get those. It's probably because they don't actually get the third tier, but they do because this is a large town. Anyway, that's easily fixed. It's only the title. So you get the Brawler's Hall. Of course, that's where you train your Raider Warband and your Raider Skirmishers. Otherwise, no real unique buildings, unfortunately. You can't upgrade the Gates of Gundabad or anything, and as I say, the Ruined Hall of Awakening only upgrades for the dwarves. It doesn't mean anything to you as the orcs. So, economy-wise, it is a little trickier than other nations to make money, but do remember that you're bordering some very wealthy regions. Mount Gundabad itself starts as very wealthy. Goblin Town's a cracker for money, as is Dane's Hall. So you can make very good money with these being a core, a bank, if you will, for your factions advancing. Oh, I didn't end the turn, did I? So this is what you're seeing on turn 1. Ah, bugger. Oh, that's frustrating. I'll do it in a moment and show you. Right, so scripts then for Gundabad. Of course, there aren't any actual scripts, but there are sort of unique gameplay features is a better name for this title. And that is, of course, subjugation. So, whereas the Northern Dunedain have the Beacon of Hope, in that the Free Peoples rise up and fight with you as you expand into their now conquered lands, and the Ardenaim have, of course, the enslavement system, or more accurately, the auxiliary system, whereby you basically pay the locals to fight for you so that your people don't have to do the dying. And Mordor will have the growing shadow, or encroaching shadow, or I can't remember what I called it, and I really liked it. I don't think it was growing. Anyway, and they'll have the opposite of the Beacon of Hope, in that it is just for evil nations. So as Mordor grows into old lands that were once held by orcs or those aligned with Melkor, they rise up and fight with Mordor. Gundabad then have a system whereby they basically force the lesser orcs of the regions to fight for them. So if you take Khan Dum, Yes, Kandum and Shadoon, you will be able to get some of Angmar's unique Warg units, or Angmar's Warg units, basically. If you head south and take Dol Guldur, you'll get some of the cheap and nasty trash units from Dol Guldur. If you take Goblin Town, you'll get Snagga and a few other Goblin units. Likewise, if you take either of the Khazad-dûms, you'll get Snagga and a few Goblin units. And if you make it to the entirety of Mordor, you will get some low-tier Mordor trash. Do also note that in each of those regions, you also get one of their elite units. Now, this won't apply for Angmar because the Mount Gram Wargs are not a true elite unit, so you probably will just get all 4 Wargs. You'll get 2 before the Barracks event. No, the Barracks event doesn't apply. You'll get... I think there's actually only 3 now as well. No, I can't remember. Basically, you get all the Wargs in one go, and that's the Angmar's offering. Whereas Goblin Town will give you Snagga, a few low-tier goblins, and the heavy goblin crossbows. The crossbows only come from Goblin Town, as do the other units. Khazad-dûm will give you the Black Uruks of the Mountains, or simply Mountain Uruks as they're called now. And again, this is a single unit available every 50 turns. So it's very, very rare, and it is just a little additional added tipple of flavour. In Dol Guldur, you will get the Castellans of Dol Guldur, and then in Mordor, there's various. You get the Sauron's Will unit comes once you take the Morannon. Morgul Chosen come once you take Minas Morgul, and you do get the 2 units of dismounted Númenóreans, or Dark Númenóreans, sorry, from Barad-dûr once you've taken that. Because, of course, the dismounted... the real reason why you get the Dark Númenóreans is because by the time you've made it to Mordor, you've long since won the game, and you just want something new to spice up your gameplay. But if you really want a reason why, the Dark Númenóreans, of course, hate with a burning passion any of the so-called faithful Númenóreans, i.e. Gondor and Dol Amroth. And if you have come in and just ousted the almighty and great powerful leader who they have now been fighting with since he arrived on their island 4,000 years ago, and convinced them that he had the answers for them, and you've just defeated him, but you promise them that you will also defeat the forces of Gondor and Dol Amroth, then they will fight with you. Otherwise, they just disappear from the game world, and I don't think that's right. So that's how you get them. The last feature, of course, is that if Angmar have been utterly destroyed, and this will continue even with the Angmar roster change, if Angmar have been destroyed and you are at war with the Northern Dunedain, then the men of Rhuideau will fight by your side, but they will only come from Knockvarachlor, Morvatarth, Camath Bryn, and Ostsul. I think possibly as well Kandum and Athelin. So those 6 regions, and that's it. You won't be able to train the Rhuideau barracks that Angmar actually gets. So Angmar can train Rhuideau men the world over. You can only train them from Rhuideau's heartlands. And that is, of course, because the men of Rhuideau have retreated to their heartlands with the destruction of their overlords. And now you've arrived, you've liberated the north. They still hate the Northern Dunedain and they want to fight with someone. And you give them the opportunity to do that. But some people don't like the fact that this purely orc faction has human influence. But let me stress again that unless Angmar is defeated, you will never train Rhuideau men. And the likelihood is, therefore, that either you have attacked Angmar yourself, and so then it's nice that you get Men of Rhuideau, because you get a benefit for actually attacking another orc faction beyond just a few of their wargs. So either you've got to attack Angmar, which is a lengthy campaign that then sees you door to door with the forces of Ered Luin, and you might not be prepared for the onslaught they're going to bring you. Or the other and far more likely alternative is that Angmar have been defeated by the AI, as is quite common. Their lands will be held by either Ered Luin, Bree, or the Northern Dunedain, who are the 3 most likely candidates to chop up Angmar once it's dead. And of course they will then be knocking on your door and bordering you at Mount Gundabad. So in order to then even train the men of Rhuideau, you've got to punch through a new enemy and get out into Rhuideau's lands anyway. So it's a really rare occurrence. So you're going to get the men of Rhuideau, so get over it. It's not going to break the game or immersion as playing as Gundabad, and trust me, when you've played them 3 or 4 times, if you like them that much, or when you've played DaC as much as many of you have, the added variety is welcome. So that is Gundabad's grand playable feature, for want of a much better word. Of course, if we come to map changes, just while this ticks through, then Berzakul, whilst it looks like a standard Orc town, is actually a unique battle map, and it was shown off in my Gundabad campaign. We fought there, and it's a very simple battle map, but it's a very cool one. So that's a totally unique battle map. Of course, Mount Gundabad itself is a unique battle map, reminiscent is a better word, of the Hobbit films. With this great gate-like structure. It does now, unlike the original mod that we took Gundabad from, which is leo.civil.uefs's unofficial patch 1.1 or whatever it's called. Our Gundabad does have a gate, a normal gate that a battering ram has to go through. So you've got a wall and a gate, and then the large gate-like looking structure, which you can even see just there, and is that one just there. That is then the fortress with the square being in front of it. Whereas the original battle map had no walls or gates at all, and it was actually just an open plain with this great citadel in the middle, but no defensive positions. So it's been edited and amended. Also, do note, as we're talking about the map, you can only assault Gundabad from the east, and only in this single tile. You cannot stand anywhere else around the mountain, so only one army can ever attack it at once, which gives it a good defensive boost. Otherwise, I don't think there's too many. Well, obviously there's no map changes because Gundabad didn't exist in the previous version. Berzakul is an entirely new region that we've reclaimed from Forodwaith. But I think that's it then. So just before we move on and end on tips and difficulty, you can see that not much really changes in the Turn 1 expansion, other than Angmar do stretch out into Angsul and Athelin, and of course the dwarves already get Witherboard and Onazanar, so they are only one region away if you take Dane's Halls. It also looks fairly like Anduin are going to come for you straight off the bat, so do you keep an eye out for that. But no real major changes around you at that turn 1 point. So tips and difficulty, definitely obviously take Berzakul as fast as possible, and then ideally go for Goblin Town, in my personal opinion, because taking Dane's Halls will put you bordering the dwarves, and they will come out of the gate flying for you. Rune and Dale, and Erebor, sorry, whilst they do start at war, they only border each other here in this remote little corner of far east of the map, and Rune have Dorwinion to contend with before they really throw everything at Erebor. So for the first sort of 50 turns, Erebor will focus mostly on you if you take Dane's Halls. So if you're worried about the dwarves, keep Dane's Halls as rebel as long as possible, and that will hold the dwarves back. You have total superiority over the forces of the Anduin, and you can utterly crush them as and when you please. So it may be an idea to take them down, but then of course remember you'll border the Woodland Realm, and Thranduil will definitely also throw everything he can at you, as well as Dol Guldur. But of course if you take out the Anduin, Dol Guldur will then get stronger, who will then assist you in taking out the Woodland Realm, and it's all just a little domino effect really. So the campaign for Gundabad is classified as not that difficult. So there we are. And now we shall jump over to the battle map to have a look at Gundabad's great armies as they appear on the battle map. Said it again, twice in as many seconds. So I'll see you in just a moment. So here we are with Gundabad's outlined roster. Now do note that there is 2 units missing really because they're mercenaries, and I didn't want to have to go into the files to edit them to have them in the army. But of course you do get the 2 raider units which act as your low tier trash. You also get of course a selection of units from the nations around you, as I've already discussed, and they are all primarily there to act as your trash. So a quick overview of the Gundabad roster shows that they've only got a couple of ranged units and very weak cavalry with a lot of melee options. But also a quick overview of them makes it look as though they don't have too much choice. But remember, as I say, that by taking Goblin Town, Khazad-dûm, Kharn-dûm and Shadoon, you do then get a range of options in this lower tier that otherwise you don't get. But these are the units that Gundabad can train no matter what. And we'll start with the Mountain Guard, or Mountain Orc Hunters. Of course, this unit is taken from the Misty Mountains, really, and as with the Misty Mountains, or Moria as they're now called, they're only available in mountain regions. And they're an excellent early-tier armor-piercing unit. In fact, they are definitely one of the best. Right up there with the Azrazair Savages. They have a 10 attack that's effective against armor. They can hide anywhere. They frighten enemy infantry. Their charge bonus is 9, but A single arrow from a unit that does 1 damage has the potential to kill them incredibly easily because they have no armor and no shield. So whilst they're an incredibly effective aggressive unit for a relatively low cost of 665, they die so easily to ranged fire. And so as a human player, these people never really are a threat, because you always single them out with your archers and kill them before they get to you. But the AI is not clever enough to do that, so the Mountain Orc Hunters get a lot of kills. They're the only borrowed units beside the Wargs to make it into the main roster, because the Snow Trolls are now Gundabad's main troll, and Angmar has to take Gundabad to get to them. So the Snow Trolls are very much a Gundabad unit now, not an Angmar one. So then we come to your first dedicated units. As I say, this is after you've used up your trash, be that Snagger, Goblins, Raiders, Wargs, Dol-Guldur's Goblins, or Mordor's trash. You come to your mainstream units, and the Snow Orc Spears and Snow Orc Raiders form this role. They are both excellent units, and they have their own voice quotes.
The fight. Raiders.
There we are.
Orcs.
That one says Snow Orcs.
Melkor's pride.
Melkor's pride. They're very well. We're very grateful to Jay McDougall, who voiced all of the Gundabad voice snippets that you hear throughout. So kudos to him. Right, the Snow Orc Spears, of course, are spears, so effective against cavalry. Remember that they're a very early tier unit. They are available at the same tier that other factions get to their militia. So they are pretty damn good for that. They have a 15 total defense, which is excellent for a militia unit. It's the best, beside possibly the elves. Their attack is only 5, but they are spears, but their charge is also 5. But they're just a really good all-round introductory unit. Good morale response. Gundabad as a whole likes fighting in forests and snow. It doesn't like fighting in deserts or grassland. They are used to the snow, so they dislike it when there is none. They, of course, get a bonus against mounts because they're spears. They cost 650, so relatively expensive. Snow Orc Raiders are the aggressive counterparts. As you can see, they dual wield with an axe in each hand, and their attack goes up to 8 to represent that, with a 6 charge bonus, but a lower defense because, of course, they do not have a shield. A good morale again, good morale response. So just a very good early tier aggressive and a good early tier defender, along with the excellent early tier ultra aggression. They are a typical glass cannon unit. Your only dedicated cavalry unit that you can train everywhere are Warg Marauders. With these folks who look like they've had... Oh, it's a leather helmet! I've been the head of this mod for many, many years, and I've seen this model many, many times, and I always assumed that the stitches were the orc's face, as though it was some kind of Frankenstein's monster riding these wargs. And now I realise that it is in fact just a leather or hide skin mask, and there is his face clearly represented underneath it. Same with those folks. I don't understand how those masks are staying on, though, because they don't extend to the back of the head. Anyway, let's ignore that. Warg Marauders are just... They are the wargs that Isengard uses, if you're interested. A 9 attack, 7 charge, and an 11 total defense. They're a very good early aggression cavalry unit, but they're not very good in the late game. They fail off. They come off significantly. Mainstream... And obviously elites, but mostly even just the mainstream post-barracks event tier anti-cavalry units will make mincemeat of wargs. So very useful to you in the early days, not that great as the game goes on. And of course you have no other options unless you take Shadoon or Khan Dum. As I say, you'll get Angmar's new, slightly more elite wargs. You also get your archers here. Now Gundabad, as has been said before, the overall ethos on Gundabad's roster is that your units are very, very good for their tier, but they cost a lot for that, and they're very rare. They train closer to the Dwarven replenishment system than the human one, and they're light years away from the Orc one. So it's very slow recruitment, but with very elite units. And on that theme of elite warriors, like Isengard and Gundabad are very, very similar, just to touch upon that as well. Isengard are good warriors with elite armor. Gundabad are elite warriors with poor armor, so that's kind of the difference. But keeping with that theme of elite orcs, you have the best orc archers in the whole game. at each tier. So the Snow Orc Scouts are the best early tier Orc Archers, and the Black Shield Archers are the best late tier Orc Archers. Human Archers, Elven will of course surpass you. Dwarven are about on point with you, but Dwarves only get a couple of Archers anyway. But in terms of Orcs, you are the best. And that starts off with the Scouts. So Snow Orc Scouts, their missile attack is 4. Now if you imagine that a Human Ranger is 6, you will see how these are much better than early tier militia human archers. Their melee attack is 5. Once they're done with that, it is just a simple sword. They have no shields, so in terms of melee, they are the worst of the 3 Snow Orc units. But they have a 4 missile damage arrow, so that gives them a little boost. So their stats are good enough that once they've run out of their arrows, you can depend on them. They're not going to just die. But of course, they're nowhere near as good as your dedicated melee. Right, well that is it for the barracks event then, or before the barracks event. Most of your choice in the early game comes from your conquests. Carndom, Shedoon, Goblin Town, Khazad-dûm, and of course the 2 raider units, giving you all of your early tiers. So that's why taking Goblin Town or Shedoon early gives you choice. I'm focusing on Shedoon and Carndom, but remember that Shedoon and Carndom only actually give you wargs. They don't give you early infantry. So Goblin Town and Shedoon together will give you will almost double your roster size. It's mad. So there we are. Right, after the barracks event, then you jump to your Black Shields.
Band it together. Warband.
Warband.
Black shields.
Black Shields. And here they are. And they're called Black Shields because they have black shields. The name is self-explanatory. And they have an adapted and updated version of the old Gundabad Guard armour that is, I don't think, anymore really in the mod. Because we've taken a look from Reforged for the Mountain Uruks of Moria's roster. So this is a unique look now to the Black Shields. They are just direct, better versions of the 2 units that came before them. So if we take a comparison with the Warband, the Snow Orc Spears have a 5-5-15. The Black Shield Spears, or Warband, have an 8-6-22. So significant boost. Their attack is 3 points better, the charge is 1 better, and the defense is 7 points better, being made up predominantly in their defense skill, as you can see there, jumping. Although all of them jump up, the shield goes up, they all go. But the most noticeable difference, well, is actually from their armour. The armour goes from 4 to 7, whereas the defence goes from 9 to 11, so it's a bigger jump. They're an excellent unit, especially for the tier that they come at. They have stats that are verging on elite, even though they are the first unit you'll get after the barracks event. So again, focusing on Gundabad's elite nature. Black Shield Warriors have a higher attack but lower defense, exactly the same as the units but lower before, except they now have a shield. So they are much more much more all-rounded than the Raiders. The Raiders are not as suited to holding the line because they don't get a shield. They'll die easily to arrow fire, and they don't get the extra defense bonus in melee, whereas the Warriors do. So overall, considerably better than the units before them, as you'd expect. And lastly then, Black Shield Archers.
Black shields.
Being, as I say, the best and finest Orc Archers the game has to offer, with a 6 missile attack. So as I was saying, humans and elves still massively outclass you and surpass your damage levels, but in terms of Orcs, there are none finer. When they finish with their bows, they have a 10 melee attack with a 15 defense, meaning significantly lower defense than the 2 other Black Shield units, but an attack that places them firmly in the middle. So again, very dependable once they have run out of arrows. Then we come to your elite units. Now the only one that can be trained everywhere are the Pale Uruks.
We stand. Pale Uruks.
And now, many of you will look at them and think, gosh, they look remarkably like Isengard's units, and I would challenge thee and say yes. They do, because if you look at the promotional material and images for the Gundabad army from the Hobbit films, they are based almost 100% on Isengard's armour style from the original trilogy. They've just made it a little lighter and given them different helmets. It is a huge cop-out that you only notice if you actually really pay attention to the armours specifically, but they have literally just cloned the Isengard armour from the first movies and made it grey instead of black. And it's another reason why those films suck utter garbage. But the Pale Uruks at least look good in the mod. They are an excellent sword and shield unit, even featuring, I believe, in the top 10 sword and board units. They have a 14 attack with a 24 defense and a 10 charge bonus. Very good all-round elite unit. They cost 1,300. Their morale is unwavering. But as I say, no restrictions. A unit that surpasses that the Pale Uruks are, in my opinion, the Orc Avengers.
Show me the enemy. Show me the enemy. Where are they?
The Orc Avengers only come from the Avengers Guild, which is a specific building that you can build in any ex-Dwarven region. Gundabad, of course, is not an ex-Dwarven region. Many of you will say, but hang on, Durin awoke there. Yes, he did, but he never lived there. He left Gundabad immediately upon awakening and went to settle eventually, of course, in Moria, or Khazad-dûm at the time. And Gundabad has been held by the Orcs for so long that you can no longer scavenge any further armour, so that's why Gundabad is not included. But Dane's Halls is the nearest place where you'll be able to build the Avengers Guild, and it gives you Orcs in Dwarven armour, if you hadn't noticed already glossing over the battalion. Some of them have just the chainmail, but then Dwarven pauldrons. They all have Dwarven helmets. There's a mix between standard Orcish and Dwarven axes throughout, which is also cool. They're a very cool looking unit. They're effective against armour, and they frighten nearby enemy infantry with a 14 attack and a 10 charge. They are a direct improvement on the Mountain Orc Hunters, all those tiers below, but with 3 times the stats in regards to defense, which is insanely good. Do note they don't have a shield, so arrows are still effective, but with 16 of their 21 defense coming from armour, archers are the least of their worries. What they are worried about, however, of course, is armor-piercing foes, because armor-piercing foes will effectively halve their entire defense stat, because their defense skill is only 5. So armor-piercing enemies are a very real threat, but they're a very rare unit, but they are one of the best strike infantry we've got in the game. Real killers. So, but as I say, restricted to only a certain number of regions. Now, restricted to only one region are Bolg's champions.
Champions of the North.
And here they are, wearing the same sort of armour as the Pale Uruks, but with the adapted banner of Gundabad on the front there. And some of them, of course, as you can see as well, have capes, and they have different helmets throughout, and they also have various different types of halberds, because they are halberdiers. They are effective against armour as well, an attack of 11 and a defense of 21. With the changes that have been made to halberdiers in version 2.3, they are now an excellent unit, a really, really good unit. But they only come from Gundabad. However, that does mean that you can train them before the barracks event, as any single location unit, general rule of thumb is that they can be trained from the game's start, because they are so rare, it just doesn't make sense to limit them to the end game. But they are faster after the barracks event. They will train faster after the barracks event, i.e. the replenishment shrinks. So you can get more of them later on. At the start of the game you can train 1, and then it'll be probably between 40 to 50 turns before you get another one. And then the barracks event will hit, so you only get 2 before. But a very, very good halberdier unit, and you'll note they cost varies because they're a mercenary unit, so I can't tell you because I don't know off the top of my head. And lastly, at the elite tier, then we have half trolls.
What if they shoot us?
Whose voice clips written by myself and very much modelled after Ogryns, basically. I had Ogryns in my head the entire time I was writing the clips for these. And so that's the kind of basis of them. They are an outstandingly powerful unit, but there's not very many of them. So first things first, they're your only javelin unit aside from your raider trash. And their missile is 14. That is a lethal javelin throw. Do note as well that they're effective against armor with the javelins. So very, very, very deadly unit at the start. They're also effective against armor once they've used their javelins, because they swap to a giant two-handed axe. Their melee attack is 20, which is obscene, and their charge bonus is 12. They are a considerably better version of the Orc Avengers, but there are only 33 of them. Sorry, I was reading that as 83. There's only 33 of them. They're a very small number. Stun locking is a real problem for them. They can also not hide, but they do also frighten the nearby enemy infantry, and they're skilled against any mount because of their size. Their total defense is 29, and they have 3 hit points. However, of that 29, 25 of it is defense skill, meaning like the Mountain Orc Hunters, they are incredibly susceptible to arrow fire. And indeed, Ballistae would likely be their absolute worst enemy. They are mini trolls in every sense of the word, in that they are very, very deadly, but they have a massive, massive weakness to ranged fire. I don't think there's too much else to say about them. Oh, the troll regions. They're restricted to troll regions, but do note that in version 2.3, troll regions does not include Khan Dum or Litash or Shadoon. So you can train them, I think, in Gundabad and then all the way down to Isengard, to the region above Isengard, sorry. And you can train them in Dane's Halls and in Dol Guldur and in the Etten Moors and in the Blue Mountains and in Mordor. Those are the troll regions at a glance. So again, restricted by regions, but fortunately you start near to where they are recruited from, which gives you a little bit of a boost. We then come over to a unit which really is an infantry, as I say all the time, but it acts more like cavalry, and those are trolls. And of course, snow trolls, as I've already mentioned, will go over to Gundabad and be more of a Gundabad unit. Angmar will be able to recruit snow trolls in version 2.3, but only if they capture the region of Gundabad, and they will only train them from that one place. Whereas Gundabad the faction trains them in any troll region. Which needs to be written on the thing. Well, it doesn't really. Everyone knows that trolls are restricted. Snow trolls also, I think, other than the Olokai, are the best trolls in the game. So it gives you a nice elite punch as well. And obviously it fits with the Gundabad theme. Even their colouring fits with the theme. It works really well. Snow trolls are just very elite shock infantry. They can climb ladders, they can use siege rams and siege towers, they can go on walls. They are not negatively affected by a unit that has spears or pikes or halberds or has any bonus against mounts, because they are not mounts. They are just large infantry. And we do that, which is also what we're going to do with trolls, Sauron, the Balrog, also as well, to stop them crashing. But they are infantry. 42 attack, 13 charge, 36 defense with 6 hit points. They are very difficult to bring down. They frighten nearby enemy infantry. They're skilled against mounts. And they are utter monsters. They also have locked morale, which is rare for trolls. They don't normally. So a very, very deadly unit. But they come from very few locations. And they cost 1,700 a pop. And you need the troll cage to get them. I should note as well, half trolls also come from the troll cage. They don't come from the barracks. So you need the troll cage to get the half trolls and the snow trolls. Finally then, we come to your bodyguard, and that rounds us out. So the bodyguard wield large two-handed scimitars, as mentioned in the book. At the Battle of the Five Armies, Tolkien describes the, I believe, bodyguard of Bolg as having large two-handed scimitars, and that is what they have. So they're just very, very good two-handed infantry. 15 attack, which is pretty damn good. They get a bonus against mounts as well. They have a charge bonus of 9 and a 26 total defense. They are one of the better foot bodyguards. Note that their morale is not locked, so you can... they will run away if the battle goes ill, but they do have unwavering morale, which is the highest category. They are ready for battle, but as I say, they will eventually break and run away. But they are excellent, excellent bodyguard units. And one of the finer orc units overall as well, to be honest. So there we are. Now, our enemy today, as obviously we fought everyone, I just chose the Vale of Anduin. Or the Anduin Vale, sorry. As our opponent today. Just so that we could see someone fight against the armies of Gundabad. But this then marks the last of the new and updated overviews. But I was thinking about the overviews just this day, or these past few days, and something someone suggested is, of course, that in version 2.3 there are a lot of changes across the entire faction, mod, sorry. But there's not enough for every faction to get a new overview. So what someone suggested I do, which I actually quite liked, is to do a video that covers cultures instead of factions. So one video, for example, for all the changes to all the wild men. One video for all the changes to all the descendants of Numenor. One video for all the changes to all of the evil men. That kind of thing. Angmar will almost certainly get a new faction overview because they are being overhauled so drastically, and likely we will also do the same for Dol Guldur, because they're also getting changed up quite a lot. forces of the Anduin charging in. I like the Anduin as well. I like all of DaC's unique factions so much. You get such creative liberty with the new factions because we can do what we want with them. We're not restricted by adherence to the ultimate word of the law. We can throw in things that shouldn't really be there or make things up because there's not enough information to make the game more interesting, and I love it. But, so that's what I plan to do after the release of version 2.3 is a collection of changed videos for cultures rather than individual factions, because as I say, there's not enough changes. But that marks the end of this round of overviews, as I say, and I hope now to replace these overviews with, as has been discussed, lore overviews. So in order to keep the ongoing Lore of Middle-earth series going and keep it fresh with things that I want to discuss, I'm going to now do a video that will cover, in the first half of each video, it will cover the actual lore behind each individual faction. So the history of the faction and the geographical location that it resides within. For example, Enid Wythe as a faction, it doesn't really have any history, but the land of Enid Wythe does. And that'll be the first half of each video. And then the second half of each video, for those of you who are here for the mod, which is more than the lore, I think, I will then do what changes we have done in DaC to adapt to the lore so that it works in a total war setting. And that is the suggestion for each video. Now, they probably will not be once a week. It depends on timings and how much I can feasibly do it. But that is the plan. But for now, and until we speak again, dear friends, Navarna den Perimad Melunin, and farewell.